Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be once again, for a while we've been going over this, we're going to be going over Tropical Storm Dorian, and there have been a lot of changes today throughout the day, just gradually, and it has moved out of the Lesser Antilles, and major track change, we are expecting it to now move somewhere over Puerto Rico, so it's almost a definite that is going to happen now. I will explain why in a little bit, but if y'all do go on and to enjoy today's video, consider subscribing and leaving a like down below, and let's go ahead and get into it. So as you can see in the satellite imagery today, we did have, well, this is pretty much over the last 3 or 4 hours, you can see the Lesser Antilles were really in it today. We saw a lot of that rain today, some winds and stuff like that. We're at 50-mile-per-hour winds still. We are not expected to strengthen too much. We're only expected to be like 65. So 15 mile per hour more in the next day, which is not that too impressive. But once again, this system is fighting a lot. It is fighting dry air. It is fighting wind shear. So those winds are trying to tear the storm apart. But somehow it's still here, and the center actually has moved. So the center of the storm has actually moved a little bit north. So it kind of redeveloped, and it's trying to redevelop tonight. We'll see if it redevelops tonight. It'll hit Puerto Rico pretty hard, but if it doesn't have enough time to regenerate, the storm, we could dodge a bullet in Puerto Rico. But right now, we are expecting it to strengthen overnight to around a 65-mile-per-hour storm. That is still pretty impressive. That's close to a hurricane, so that's a little scary. They need to be ready, especially after Hurricane Maria. They're kind of still trying to recover. The Lesser Antilles are still getting moisture today, and that's what we're seeing with this storm right now. Okay, if we were to go ahead and move on to the National Hurricane Center, we're going to go ahead and look at that also. And pretty much right here, we're going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit. We're going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit, and you can see right now, with our 8 o'clock update, we have 50-mile-per-hour winds. So this is still not that intense because it did hit the Lesser Antilles. It has that dry air wind shear around it. The wind shear is expected to break up a little bit, and once it gets past Puerto Rico, we are expecting some more development as we do get more favorable conditions. And you can see we are expecting 60-mile-per-hour winds tomorrow, and then by the time it gets to Puerto Rico, we are expecting those 65-mile-per-hour winds by 2 p.m. tomorrow, this does say, and it should be past Puerto Rico by about 12 hours after that, and we are expecting it to hit Puerto Rico. Now, the question still is, you can see how most of this cone is somewhere over Puerto Rico, but some of it is not. You can see there's still this little wedge. Now, if it were to go in between Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, that's never really happened. I was watching something, and they said that's never really happened before. So that would be a little different, and it wouldn't do much to it because it missed the mountains, and that would be pretty bad for a lot of the down the line. But it's looking like it is going to go over Puerto Rico now because of that center. The center has moved north, and so the whole track has moved a little bit north and a little bit east too. And you can see how Puerto Rico, you should be in the middle of it at 65-mile-per-hour winds. And then by the time it hits Puerto Rico and it gets in those mountains, we should be expecting around 45-mile-per-hour winds once it gets out of Puerto Rico. And then we should expect strengthening before it gets to the U.S. and the Bahamas. It should be back up to a 65-mile-per-hour storm in the next about 3 days. So it's not looking good for anyone in the path of this right now. Any land 70-mile-per-hour storms in the next 4 days, and then by your 5-day, by your September 1st, I'm pretty sure that's what this is, your 5th day. It does say 1 20-hour forecast, so we're somewhere near there. And we're going to be at 70-mile-per-hour winds. This does say an 85-mile-per-hour wind gust. Of course, this could change if it has more interaction than expected. Then after that, it could end up going through Georgia and South Carolina. This is kind of what the GFS is saying. The GFS is a little overkill. But you can see how that northern tick has happened with the National Hurricane Center's forecast. We still do have the cone over pretty much all of Florida, and you can see how that possibility to go back into the Gulf after it hits Florida is very likely. So a possible track with this could be something like this, and that would be that wouldn't be good for a lot of people because the Gulf, we could strengthen it just a little bit. And the question is, could it turn into a hurricane? Most likely not, is what we're saying right now. But that could definitely change. We do have hurricane watches in Puerto Rico, just in case we do have that rapid strengthening. But right now, we're going to stick with the tropical storm warnings, but we do have a hurricane watch just in case it does strengthen into a hurricane or we do see hurricane conditions a little bit more than expected. But right now, we're just thinking a tropical storm warning. We also do have hurricane watches across parts of the Dominican Republic. I do think they may drop that and just turn it into a tropical storm warning, but we will have to see. Okay, if we were to go ahead and move on, is there anything I really do want to look at? Let's look at wind speed probabilities really quick. And this is Tropical Depression 6 over here, so don't really pay attention to that if you just want to know a lot about this system. But we're going to move down a little bit so everyone can see the key. There we go. And you can see how we have a really good chance of tropical storm force winds as we do move into Puerto Rico tomorrow. Our main threat is definitely going to be that flooding that we're very concerned about. And it should be reduced a little bit just because of how fast the system is moving and how small it is. But it still is expected to bring some big rains, and you can see how that chance has been extended into parts of central Florida of those tropical storm force winds. So that has changed quite a bit from yesterday. We have a better chance. And if we were to go to your hurricane speed probability, you can see there's really no big probability, but you can see once it gets near the Bahama and Florida area, we at least have a very slim chance, which does mean they're thinking, yeah, it could turn into a hurricane. We're just going to have to see. There's a window for opportunity of it to turn into that, especially if it was to go in between the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. But right now we're thinking it should hit those mountains of Puerto Rico, and it should really damage it. And when it re-strengthens, we're not expecting a hurricane, but that could definitely change. It does change like that usually. Okay, so you can see right now we're going to go ahead and go on to the spaghetti models. We've been looking at this almost all week. It's nothing new. If you are new, these are pretty much just a bunch of models put together, and this is the global and hurricane models. I'm pretty sure it was all put together. I think it is. Let me go check just to let y'all know. You can see, I'm pretty sure it is, yeah, it's the global plus hurricane models, and this is the 18Z model run, and you can see how we are expecting it to go over Puerto Rico, or maybe in between Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. That's still a possibility. We are not expecting a Dominican Republic landfall anymore, just because its center, once again, did redevelop a little bit north. So we're not really expecting it anymore to make landfall there. And you can see how these are expected to go through the Bahamas once it hits Puerto Rico or goes in between the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. And you can see some models do take it up this way. The GFS is doing that. That's one thing the GFS is doing differently. And you can see how a lot of the other models do take it into Florida, around your central Florida area, near Orlando, Port State. Lucy, I'm pretty sure is the name of it, something like that. And you can see how some models do take it back over the Gulf, and it could re-strengthen, just not too bad. It won't strengthen too much, we don't think. But if it was to, but if we were to have it doing this, that could be a little different. But right now, a lot of these specific models are showing it hitting Florida and kind of just going back into the Gulf just for a few hours and then coming back into the Florida Panhandle. And beyond that, we're going to have to see later on. Okay, if we were to go to the GFS ensembles or the GEFS ensembles, and you can see how these do have it making landfall in the Dominican Republic. So with our latest update, I don't think it really has updated quite that much, or if it's just thinking that. We are not expecting that. So any of these models that are thinking of South Florida landfall, they're still possible. That's why the National Hurricane Center still has a cone there. But we are expecting it to make landfall somewhere here. And you can see how these models do take it somewhere through here for our track. So that's the track with this. Just that's the closest I can get. But it has it hitting Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, coastal North Carolina. It has it doing quite a bit. Some models even wait until it hits North Carolina, but right now we're not expecting that. You should anywhere across the southeast coast, you should be on alert, even the Gulf Coast. But right now it's not looking too likely. If we were to go ahead and move on to your Okay. CMC or GEPS models, you can see how these are way more crazy. See, remember I did say on the southeast coast we need to be on alert, but we shouldn't be on huge alert, just be a little ready. But you can see how these are all over the place. And what we do get from this, you can see that black line is representing where it could go. I'm just going to dig a little deeper in because I don't agree with that. If we were to keep going, you can see how it doesn't really make a Dominican Republic landfall. So it kind of does it goes towards Puerto Rico. So that's what we're thinking right now. And you can see how those models that did hit the Dominican Republic, some of them, are going into the Central Gulf, Southern Florida. But a lot of these models do end up going through Central Florida and coming up through here. So anywhere, if you're in here, could be affected by this. So anywhere I do mark right here could be affected. So that's my personal cone. If you're anywhere in there, you need to be on alert. Maybe we could even expand it into here. So if you're anywhere there, you do need to be on alert over the next week, especially when it moves out of where it makes landfall. But right now, that's what we should be expecting. That's my cone of uncertainty, my personal one. And if we were to go ahead and move on to more spaghetti models on our intensity guidance, you can see how these have went up a little bit since yesterday. Now, right now, we are expecting it to remain a tropical storm, at least the National Hurricane Center is. And you can see a lot of models do stay there. But a lot of the models do, about 10 of them, do take it up to that Category 1. And most of them that are going up to that Category 1 almost get to that Category 2, or some of them do. So I'm guessing this scenario would be if it went in between the Dominican Republic and the Puerto Rico area, but I'm guessing these would be when it hits Puerto Rico and then it goes down a little bit. So that's my guess. You can see how some of these specific models peak at a hurricane before it hits the Dominican Republic, goes down, and then spikes back up around the Florida Bahamas landfall. So that is kind of what some of these models are saying, but a lot of them peak at a Category 1, maybe less, and a lot of them do get up to that Category 2, so that could be the track if we go in between the two islands, and it really doesn't get affected that much. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the windy.com and go to your rain and thunder. This is shaping out to be a very long video, which is fine. It is a tropical update. But if we were to go and look at this, you can see by your 1 p.m. hour or really early, really late morning. This is 2 p.m., but I think really late morning it could be here too. You can see how the heavy rains are starting to enter your southeastern Puerto Rico area. And we do have a lot of these rains that are already entering. Just those thunderstorms, not the direct thunderstorms in it. But if we were to look at your Wednesday night, you can see it does look pretty intense across here. And you can see how it could make landfall near Ponce area. I'm pretty sure is how you say it. I know off the Weather Channel they are there right now, so they could get a direct impact there. That would be pretty crazy. But you can see how it is expected to make some kind of track here with the rainfall, and it should interact with these mountains pretty well. If you're anywhere along those mountains, you do need to watch out because that moisture will ride up those mountains, and it will really drop a lot of rain. But you also do have to think it will weaken the storm incredibly by quite a bit. And you can see once it gets out of the Dominican Republic, it's a little bit less organized, but then it starts to re-strengthen, may even change the center of it again. We will have to watch out for that. If it does, our track could change 1 day or 2 days before landfall in America, so we do have to watch out for that. And you can see by your Friday, it's just moving out in the open Atlantic, really starting to get its act together. It's still a pretty small storm, but it starts to get a little bigger. It's not too big still. And you can see how it does go over the Bahamas by your Saturday night and Sunday. And then by your 7 a.m. or 9 a.m. on Sunday, we're making landfall across Florida, or just sometime on Sunday. And that is not good timing. This is not great timing at all because a lot of people will be asleep, and hopefully, I don't want to make landfall at all, but if it were to, I want it to be when everyone is awake. And you can see how it does make landfall somewhere around Central Florida, your Palm Bay, Coco Vera Beach, Port St. Lucie, you're right south of it. And you can see how these do drop really heavy rains on your Sunday. So once again, this is a very fast storm. So the rainfall will be bad, but it won't be it won't be the worst we've ever saw, but it won't be the least we've ever saw, because it really does have really heavy rains in it. Now, this is on the specific model, our European model. It does move into the Gulf after it does make landfall in central Florida. And you can see how it does start to intensify a little bit, but just before it can intensify really bad, about your Tuesday, it is hitting the Gulf Coast. So we may have a day where we do have it. So the Florida Panhandle, around your Pensacola area, your Destin area, Foley, Crestview, anywhere there, we do have to watch out, because this could be a game changer if it does do this. We could have quite a few landfalls with this system. Mobile, you could have to be watching out. And then you can see how it does after landfall into Mississippi and parts of Alabama with those really heavy rainfall. And you can see by your Wednesday, it's in northern Alabama or Mississippi, and then by your Thursday, it's moving through Tennessee and entering your North Carolina region. So once it gets into these mountainous regions in North Carolina, it might break down the system just a little bit. There's a possibility it could. So after that, we'll have to see what does happen. But I'm not expecting it to crazily mess these up, just because the mountains, they are big. They are definitely big, but this is a good system with a lot of moisture. So I do think the moisture will get past it. I think we might reduce it a little bit, but we'll have to see how those mountains do affect us if it does go over that area. Okay, if we were to go ahead and go over to your GFS model, you can see we're just going to go through this really quickly. It's finally getting its act together. For a while, it just wasn't. It just was not showing it, and we knew it was coming. It just wasn't showing it, and it finally has. We're just going to go over America, because I already did with the European on the Caribbean islands, or Caribbean, however you guys do like to say it. And you can see this one is a little bit more north, and it has a way more delayed landfall. So this has it making landfall on your Monday around your Georgia, South Carolina line, and you can see how it just moves a lot of the moisture through South Carolina, North Carolina, parts of Georgia. You will get some moisture in Florida with this model, but this one doesn't have as much moisture in place. I mean, it has a lot of moisture in place, but it doesn't have that track where it could be our worst case scenario like the European, which the European I'm still agreeing with the most. The European had some track like this, and it's a really complicated track. And you can see how the JFS has some kind of track like this, and it's just way more simpler, but it does cause a lot of areas to get a lot of rainfall. So you can see how different those are. So this is kind of where we will put the cone, possibly where they may put the cone. I don't know if they will or not, but somewhere in here is where they might put our cone for the landfall, for where it could be going after. So we want to see, they have really, they're really determined, well, not determined, but they really do think that it'll make landfall somewhere through here and then move into the Gulf, the National Hurricane Center, which I do agree with. I think that's the scenario that we are definitely looking at. I think that's what we should be expecting the most. But there's still the stuff like the GFS is what does make us doubt it a little bit. But most likely we are expecting it to keep that track where it does make landfall in Florida, move into the Gulf, and then make landfall once again along the Gulf. If we were to look at your total accumulated precip, once it does make landfall, you can see the rainfall is pretty intense. It just has a lot of moisture with it. It's a pretty fast system. It just has a lot of moisture. And you can see how there's almost a foot or more of rain across parts of coastal Georgia, parts of South Carolina. And as we move into your coastal North Carolina, we still do have some pretty big rains. Maybe not like a foot of rain, but still around 3 to 6 inches of rain, or maybe even more in some spots. I do not really agree with this track. I just did want to show it, just kind of to show how we do have our doubts just because of that with this system. But if we were to move back onto your European model, we're going to look at the rainfall here a little bit more, just because I do trust this more. And you can see how we are still expecting some rain across the Lesser Antilles, maybe another 3 inches in some parts. And you can see how we are expecting a lot of rain as we do move into Puerto Rico. So maybe 6 to 8 inches of rain, maybe even more in some spots across the western coast. And as we do move across your southern coast, Let's move it. Oh, I keep clicking on the cities. If we move across your southern coast, southeastern coast, around that 2 to 3 inches range, and then your northern coast, we still are expecting quite a bit of rain. Maybe not as much in the northeastern part of Puerto Rico, but we will have to see if that does change. And you can see how the Dominican Republic kind of misses out, because if it was to make landfall in Puerto Rico or go a little west of Puerto Rico, but still no landfall, either way, Puerto Rico's getting most of the moisture out of the two areas, just because most of the moisture is usually, and with the system it is too, and it's pretty small too, it's on the eastern side, so most of the moisture won't be on the western side of the system, but you will most likely get some wraparound showers and thunderstorms to come through. And you can see once we do hit the Bahamas, it's around 4 to 5, 4 to 6 maybe inches of rain. And then once we get to southern Florida, Central Florida, there are some pretty intense rainfalls, anywhere from 4 to 7 inches. So once again, it's just really fast. So that is reducing our totals a little bit, but that does mean flash flooding is definitely what we need to be worrying about. Southern Florida, 2 to 3 inches of rain. Northern Florida is still up in the air. Right now, it doesn't have it getting much, maybe 2 to 3 inches, which is quite a bit sometimes. But compared to other spots, it's not as bad. And you can see once we get across the Florida Panhandle, we have some 5 to 8 to 10 inches of rain that could be falling with this model. And then across eastern Mississippi, there are some pretty good chances of some really bad rains. You just have to be right there with the system. And you can see in Alabama, we have 2 to 3 inches around almost the whole state. In some parts of the state, there are 3 to 6 inches of rain. And then the model run does end around your northern Alabama, northern Georgia area, where we have about 4 to 8 inches of rain. And your Tennessee area, your southern Tennessee, anywhere across there. And then what we are expecting is the storm to kind of move in this region, somewhere across here, or it could dip into South Carolina. We will have to see what this model does do, but right now it looks like anywhere in here is where it is taking it. Okay, guys, I hope everyone did enjoy today's video. I know it was a little bit of a long video, just there was a lot to cover, and you could have skipped throughout the video if you really wanted to, but if you did watch the whole video, I really do appreciate you. But I hope everyone did enjoy today's video. If you did, consider subscribing and leaving a like down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great day.